Yes.
Yes.
Yay. Are you not getting sound?
No.
I'm not terribly popular on Twitter, and I have 31 mentions, and it's already terrifying. 31.
At least
No,
two of those
it's
are
on
mine.
Yes.
I'm
Just like, I don't know what to
Oh,
do.
it's on this
There you
side.
go.
That's right. Let's see.
Yeah, we're just getting everything.
I don't know.
How appropriate that
Do we have anything to play on?
Yep.
for our Leitch talk.
Hannah, do you know what Emma's Skype handle is?
It's at Emma Westecott.
Thanks.
Welcome to PsXXYborg. The journey you are about to undertake represents the apex of consciousness integration, reality expansion, and systematic cognitive transcendence. Few are able to withstand the trials of rational paradox. But for those who seek fulfillment in eternity, the rewards are limited only by your ability to imagine them. A new life lies ahead. Are you prepared to evolve?
And she's online. Cool.
Yeah, I guess I'll do a quick intro to the after the first intro. Just a quick. So this is the second PsXXYborg in Leitch, and Cyborg was something I know Alex and Anna and Sagan from Toronto, and it's something I was sort of knew a bit about and been in shows where it was there, and it was sort of the inspiration for my track. So actually, I quoted the paper you wrote was in my track when I sent the email for. So this is Anna, Sagan, Alex. There's also Emma Westecott who's Skyping in.
Emma is Skyping in, so we're going to have the predictable good times with Skype.
It might be not as bad if you do two universities trying to Skype in.
Yeah.
I feel like universities are just much
They'll
more
cancel each
than-
other out.
Yeah, than other human stuff.
Yeah, I'm just having a little bit of trouble actually finding her contact in my list.
We can just keep going.
Okay, keep going.
And I'm
she
and
nerd.
so it's a full panel, so
She nerd.
Yeah.
I will.
It's not showing me
We'll
anything.
have some time for Q&A.
Cool. Are we gonna leave the door open? Is that?
You want me to close?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Like, I actually just can't find her in the contacts list.
Maybe Sagan has her.
Yeah, you can just keep
Keep
going.
going. All right. I'll start. Once I stop getting messaged. So welcome to the non-compliance of Glitch, a reflection on Seaborg. Thank you so much for coming. I think you're going to be very entertained. This is like a pretty wild project, so yeah, fun times. Thank you, Yvette and Different Games, so much for having us. Also, we really appreciate this outreach. This is a project that has stopped having public appearances like a couple years ago, so it's nice to still feel relevant. Just to introduce ourselves, my name is Hannah Epstein. I'm a game designer. That was my role on the PsXXYborg, many ways to pronounce this project. And I was a video artist. And currently, I'm a Master's of Fine Arts candidate at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, where I do make sort of conceptual art games as part of my practice. And PsXXYborg, as you'll see, was very much a launching board for me. This is our brilliant tech person, Alex.
Can I just see our notes on this, please? Okay, it says click to add notes on mine. So when we were building PsXXYborg, I was a candidate for my Master's of Design at OCADU. I am now a robot electronic artist, and also, as you can tell from my earlier talk, I basically just give talks about ideas a lot now.
And then brilliant co-designer Sagan.
that is me. My background's in animation, and I sort of stumbled into video games. And I'm currently the executive director of the Hand-Eye Society, which is a nonprofit video game arts organization in Toronto.
It's basically where all the cool game stuff happens in Toronto, and she runs it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And the person who's currently trying to Skype in is Dr. Emma Westecott, who's a researcher and a mentor on the Cyborg project, and currently a professor of game studies and game design at OCAD University. And basically, her role ended up being a liaison between feminists and games, who you saw at the keynote yesterday. They presented, so she basically works with them and then worked with us. So what is Seaboard? Like, what are we even talking about? Who are these people introducing themselves? So basically we're holding a funeral for Seaboard. It's a game that lived from 2012 to 2016. And though we're done with it, this is kind of a bit of a celebration, calm celebration of Cyborg and the effects it has had.
You're live. I'm just letting you know.
Okay, hello.
This is our boss.
Is that Emma?
This is our boss. Please start many cat videos. Emma, you have a room full of humans. Here are your humans.
So we're not going to have camera for you, but...
I don't know quite where to look because I have Twitch on one device and I have the room on another device. I'm on all the devices.
So appropriate, like just this disembodied voice, like
Yeah.
out of nowhere. This is very much in the spirit of this project.
Very much.
Do a screen game technology shattering itself as we look at it.
Yeah, multiple fractured identities. This is about Seaboard. It's all Seaboard.
Yeah, a little bit more about what exactly it was. So this was an art project that we all worked on. It was a very labyrinthine process getting to the final product. So if this talk seems very winding and full of tangents, that's because it really reflects the creative process that we went through. So feel free at any point to just like grab onto something and ask us about it. So the sort of the whole point of this game was rooted in the impulse to push all these boundaries related to all of us working in the space that included feminism and video games and art and all our individual identities and ideas of what those things meant to us and how we relate or exist within those spaces. So it's kind of like a weird Venn diagram with all these overlapping circles. And the concept of glitch was really important to this project because it was conceived as a disruption or an interruption of the system or the status quo. Not just the patriarchal status quo, but also a challenge to the notion of feminism that is unified under a single ideology. And so we wanted to kind of fragment that and like bust that idea wide open. So it was a really personal project where we were all coming into it at different points within our journeys through feminism and art and video games, and this allowed us to kind of explore our own struggles with defining these things to ourselves as artists and as feminists and game makers. So basically the thing we want to explore with this talk is our creative decision to incorporate glitch aesthetics and how it's directly tied to this impulse to interrupt or challenge external and internal tensions around defining all of these different fields that we were kind of interested in looking at, and the never-ending struggle to reconcile our place into these spaces.
Yeah, so glitches metaphor and ourselves as glitches.
So yeah, we're gonna show you sort of like clips from within the project and like what it looked like.
Yeah.
It was really important to me to work with people who were really brilliant at video and at animation through this, because I got to handle a lot of new tech, but it was all really invisible, which is why I was talking about the visibility of things breaking earlier. Invisible breakages suck.
Return to the land from which you came.
Welcome to PsXXYborg. Welcome to PsXXYborg. The series of tests you are about to undertake are part of an experimental prototype and consciousness mapping software. As such, it is imperative that your full attention is maintained about the duration of the procedure. Thank you for your cooperation. Signaling a return to the land from which you came.
So what you're seeing there is a lot of the aesthetic of Seaborg, and like again a bit of like an introduction to like the game itself. And very bluntly, the most basic thing about the game itself is that it was a dual screen game, one screen interactive that you would hold in your hand, screen B here, and a second screen that you would be controlling and projecting different material. So a fragmentation of images. The physical vessel of the game was a van.
Hannah bought this van off Craigslist and painted it like this.
It was like a very sketchy parking lot Craigslist purchase. A van that was pretty much illegal to drive, and you couldn't drive.
It was the best.
Yeah, and then we added this disclaimer to help put people's minds at ease. Basically, we're inviting strangers into the back of the van to play a video game.
Like feminist in games, this is where you're funding games.
So inside what we did.
Yeah, this is what the inside looks like. Or this is,
Hannah found a really cool effect where she would put like curtains up in there, and then when you projected things on the curtains, if you had multiple layers of the curtains, you could kind of see multiple projections going back. So it kind of like expanded the space.
it was like fake, like virtual reality, like fake 3D, like fake hologram, I guess, having a bunch of sheer curtains.
The effect is called a Pepper's Ghost. I ended up doing a lot of research into them after this project, and it was really cool. It's basically a great way to do 3D on the cheap, as long as you have one or more projectors or a lot of patience with the one projector you have.
This was like, so the stated purpose of the game when we brought players into this was the idea is that the player is going to upload their consciousness into a technological hive mind called the Nous, N-O-U-S, which I think is a German or Latin word for mind.
It's also like a French word for like us.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it probably has roots in a lot of sort of similar idea. And the kind of the idea behind this was that it was a spoof of the technological singularity, which we'll get into a little bit later, but that was kind of the idea that technologies and AI are going to become so advanced that it's just going to, control and take over everything, and there might be an option for humans to also assimilate their minds, like uploading your mind into sort of this digital immortality. And so the idea is that the game took the form of a rigorous psychological test that the game is administering to you while you're being bombarded with these psychedelic glitched out images and audio. So it's pretty unsettling.
Yeah, like in some ways it's like a like time traveling like game. Like it's come from the future where the singularity exists and exists in 2012 now. You can upload your consciousness finally and escape your disgusting meat case of a body and like become clean and digital.
Yeah.
So this is actually what Seaborg ended up looking like when we were finished with the project. For the project itself, we didn't have this. This is a Raspberry Pi 2, I think. And what it is a tiny little pocket web server that will serve a local area network that has a contained captive portal, very much like what you need to use to sign in here at NYU. And instead of it popping up a consent form, it just pops up the access to the game itself. So by walking into the space and pairing with the network, you get the control for the game on your phone automatically. And I had lots of thoughts about privacy and how people are willing to interact with things with their phones, all varied, and it was a lot harder to do than I thought, and I learned that you shouldn't put 8 gigs of video through Wi-Fi in under 5 minutes. It's bad. You have to put things on blocks of ice after a while. So that was what I built. Like I got a box off Thingiverse, and a lot of work went into making a tiny Linux box that can slip into your pocket, which was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, and then in a second we're gonna see like all the places Seaborg has been shown at, and then so keep that in mind of like what a pain in the butt it was to set all of this stuff up. You have like the tech, you have the van, and like just everything.
The decor
inside and all that stuff.
This is just like a little video clip summarizing what we're trying to describe so far. This is the first physical incarnation of Seaborg as it was presented to the public
In 2013.
in 2013.
I just love this part of the game. It felt like a fortune telling thing, like it's just fucking your way.
Yeah. It was actually that hard to say. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what it looked like, the band on the outside, band on the inside.
So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this, I'll just read the second paragraph. Was it merely a game, as some on the outer rings of initiations dared to suggest? A practical joke invented specifically to provoke academic gossip? Or was the ritualistic act of engagement with the device itself a portal to human enlightenment, an invitation for worthy players to replicate themselves into an immortal digital consciousness? And I wrote this. This was never in the game or really like shown to the public. This was when we were messing around with ideas and stuff. And this was kind of inspired by a book called House of Leaves, which is extremely meta. There's like so many layers of narrative in this one book. And this was kind of like me trying to get in the mindset of the meta mythos nature of this thing, as if it was being described by a fictional scholar who might be writing about it in the future.
Yeah, we like created a lot of assets that surrounded the game itself, like sort of like a fake archive to really build a mythology around Seaborg itself and make it seem a lot larger and like more pertinent to the world.
So we'll blow through these because we have like 7 minutes to get to slide 50.
Right, okay, so this showed a queer arcade in Toronto, long winter in Toronto, in a different form. This is a tent form. We couldn't bring a van inside, obviously. So people could be in the tent and people could watch from the top outside. There was mesh, you could watch people as they played. It showed at the Feminist Art Conference in Toronto, Sight and Sound Festival, where they rented us a van, and obviously this was a rented van, we couldn't paint it, so we sort of makeshift painted a bunch of cardboard and decorated the outside and decorated the inside as well, and brought people in from the street and had a more performative element with our cult leader from the game, as you'll meet later, playing a role outside on the street, inviting people in. We had a sign that said "Free Mind Upload," and trying with our really like rough French, trying to communicate to Montrealers to like come in and like
Get to the back of this thing.
It was super
Well, yeah, we'll have some more pictures.
Yeah,
of
you'll be
that
amazed how
later.
many children came in. And their parents worked with it. So how did this start? We all know each other originally from the Difference Engine Initiative, was something that started in Toronto to have women make their first game. And so that's how we all met each other.
That was back in 2011,
Yeah.
and I was a participant in the first run of the program, and then they asked me to lead the second one, and these two were participants. And then, so after that, we met as part of this feminist initiative, and then we became artistic collaborators on this project.
Yeah. The Feminists in Games conference was held, the first one, in 2012. I participated and shared a paper called The Game of Infinite Connections that basically tried to imagine a new type of feminist game making that took from Donna Haraway's notion of the cyborg, post-gender, transhumanism, and digital drugs, and sort of like mash them all together in a blender and try to make those like design principles for feminist games, something that like did away with gender completely and imagined like a transhuman, just a creature fully of mind, like avatarless. And so all of that went on to become part of a pitch for funding at the same conference, where we said like, okay, we've shown the like theory behind a possible type of game making. Will you now give us money to try and make a game based on these principles? and Fig said yes, which is pretty amazing.
It was really cool.
Really big risk for them to take, and a leap of faith, really. Resources and inspiration. Sagan.
Yeah, so this is sort of something that really stuck with me when I was brought onto the project. So this is a picture of Ray Kurzweil and Donna Haraway. Ray Kurzweil is sort of hailed as this genius tech revolutionary guy. He writes a lot of books about artificial intelligence and nanobots, and the technological singularity has kind of become his calling card. Like, he gets consultations at Google to talk about this stuff. And, you know, just suggesting that we'll be able to somehow, like, just abandon our lowly flesh bodies and become like this, you know, all-seeing, omnipotent, live forever machine person. And he always struck me as kind of a shallow idea of this utopian future where we're all going to live in a post-racial, post-gender world, not because of the continuous advocacy or efforts to resist oppressive systems and like lift people out of them. Like, his idea is like, we're gonna be in that utopia because a bunch of white men are gonna build machines that become so smart that they're going to deliver us from our horrible earthly existence. And so
You put it that way.
so I always kind of like resisted kind of his ideas, and then to me, the fact that I didn't know about Donna Haraway or the Cyborg Manifesto until Hannah brought it up as something that the game was kind of going to be based on. And I felt like she was kind of the opposing force to that, like the idea that the cyborg rejects this sort of Western Christian symbolism of this robot savior, and any idea of a perfect utopia where there's no struggle or conflict, because the conflict is embodied in a cyborg. Like, you're both a human and machine, and you're constantly struggling with that. So I thought, like, her ideas were way more interesting than Ray's, even though Ray is the genius, and, you know, Donna's just a feminist scholar.
I would say that, I'm going to say that. Go on.
And yeah, so this is
I think
just...
one of great. I don't know if I
Talk.
Okay, great, good. I think the other reason why Haraway was so impactful to the work, from my point of view, is just how she had a deep integrity.
Hello. You turned it up and then it turned itself off.
Scott.
Emma?
Emma.
Come back.
Never press buttons.
Never touch anything. Hello. Carry on.
Okay. I was thinking heroes and it's still talking.
I don't know.
This is just for your reference in case you, I mean, a lot of people, like, that work is pretty seminal. So
Yeah, jazz hands, Donna Haraway, rather be a cyborg than a goddess. Okay, next.
Yeah. This is quickly just a book that, again, Hannah lent me from her collection, and it's sort of a book about how the religious imagination, far from disappearing in our supposedly secular age, continues to feed the utopian dreams, apocalyptic visions, digital phantasms, and alien obsessions that populate today's technological unconscious. So that whole book was really the space in which we wanted Seaborg to occupy.
I'm just going to add another quote from it where it's talking about mass media and infotech and the mind-body split. Consciousness becomes something which can be downloaded, excised from the matrix of animality, and immortalized as information. No longer ghost in the machine, but machine as ghost, machine as Holy Ghost, ultimate mediator, which will translate us from our may-fly corpses to a pleroma of light. So as you see, like, if you're getting like a connective thread yet, I know this is like a lot of like disparate parts, like I think that quote like really sums up a lot of like what we were trying to do in this project. Alex is...
Yes. So the next one is Hélène Zizou. Hélène Zizou is a French post-structuralist theorist who really had it in for Derrida because she just didn't like him very much. And she wrote a great essay called The Laugh of the Medusa, which is a joke about the wrath of the Medusa. And essentially, because it's French, it's a complicated play on words that doesn't translate super well. But the important concept is that the word thief and the word flight are the same word in French. So you can make lots of great puns about stealing yourself away for freedom, which is what a lot of The Laugh of the Medusa is about. It's also about sex. It's about sex and about bodies and about how you are embodied and about how if you're a lady or are a lady correlated person, people are going to try to write you out of being because you're the opposite of a dude. You know, it's really oppositional. It's from a very specific theoretical background, but I really found it wonderful while I was writing all this JavaScript, which everybody looks down on all the time. Like, they really look down on JavaScript. And when we were writing this, Node was super new, and was also super garbage, but was super new and easy to read. It was legible for web developers. This was miraculous. So Zizou writes about how you must write yourself into being. You have to write your own experience. You have to write what you want to see. So this was my first project. For my first project, I built a multi-monitor web application that lived on a distributed server in a van. Sometimes I tell people from Heroku that, and they just look at me, and then they like quietly purchase me a beer, and it's really nice. I like that experience. But it's because I wrote what I wanted to see, which was this. Okay, next.
Just another reference in terms of like FMV games that we were looking at for inspiration.
That's like full motion video.
Full motion
It's
video
basically video
games.
games that have live action footage incorporated in them from like mostly from the 80s and 90s, and they were mostly terrible.
Yeah, so Night Trap is up there, and Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
Which is a comically low-budget softcore porn title that we were obsessed with for some reason.
Yeah.
And we were like, we want this to be our game. So again, like the idea, maybe because of the idea of like bodies and stuff, I don't know, I'm trying to like make a connection here.
We just loved it.
Yeah,
So
just, we can speed kind of through these. Because this is just our early attempts at mapping, because we're working with two screens. There aren't very many narratives that have two screens, so we were kind of like figuring out possibilities. And then the next slide is just more, like there were so many of these that we didn't put most of them in.
They're just really early
Early stuff. Possibilities for all, like, these are hotspots, so it's like these are all the different configurations you could have, and most of these didn't end up coming in. And then this was, we had a whole script that had, like, we were looking at it after 2 years of not looking at it and being like, wow. What even is all of this?
So yeah, this is a little bit more about the technology. This is from a previous talk of mine, which is that the magic of code is that it disappears, and obviously my new magic of code is that you can make it very visible if you want to. But the dream of Zeborg was this kind of teleportation. You could go from one place to another. It would be really snappy. It would work really well. Next slide. This is the actual literal experience of working with HTML5 videos. It's just this all the time. I was watching Hannah's video earlier, and I actually started to just get the heart racing, like, is it gonna crash? It's a YouTube video, it can't crash. Is it gonna crash? That was what it was like. Yeah, very new. Whoops.
Just some image gathering and like early process.
You can go to the next.
Okay. So
basically when we started out doing this, a lot, like, I mean, Glitch is one part of what we were doing, but it was also a lot of collage work, like just gathering random images and audio from, like, I had a ton of footage from family vacations that I threw in there. Like, sometimes we would just pass each other clips. I trolled the Internet Archive a lot to find, like, old newsreel footage and audio. We used a text-to-speech software for the voice of the new, so that glowing orb, pulsating orb with a very soothing female voice was just a text-to-speech software where we would feed her lines of dialogue and then just record what the computer spit out.
Yeah, think about like our artistic creative process is sort of like flailing and spinning at the same time, and like holding a camera and just like for basically months at a time recording footage of your life. So there's a lot of like organic process, just like taking footage from day to day, and then like digital process, like hours and hours and hours of like sitting at an editing table and just like trying to mess with the image and like give it a glitchy effect and like something that would find like an overarching single stylized aesthetic for the whole game. And so here's just like a little bit of those early experiments for you. This was just like trying to illustrate the two screens, just so you know what's going on.
We're just looking for a place to spend.
Don't worry. She's a specialist.
Hey, what's in the box?
New
New horizons.
New
What the hell is a near set of immensely plasma?
In a restless search for new ways of living,
There's only one way out of
the
here.
mystery and the promise of distant horizons.
Don't you want to live in a city of eternal love? Eternal love.
In a search that has continued for centuries.
Don't you want to live in a city of eternal love?
So imagine being trapped in like this small space, like these people have locked the doors behind you and you can't escape, and just like being bombarded with this for 15 minutes.
Here's also like some early experiments with trying to build a narrative, trying to like really create a poetic, mythological, like mythopoetic narrative of wanting to leave your body. Like, what is the sort of story, the mythological story people will tell after we've been able to upload our consciousness about what it was like to have to leave your body. Sorry. It was like that. So.
You're dead. Wrapped loosely by the trunks of northern pines, your once upon a time body decays under the midnight sun. Strange beasts draw near to dance with your once upon a time flesh. They will have to wait. Only you sawing apart your once upon a time body. Only you.
Tropes that we pulled, like it starts with the game over screen, and then it has this very non-video gamey cutscene. Like there's no interactivity, and then I think we repurposed this part for the title because it opens with this. So we really just sort of we would build things and then rip them apart and then reconstitute them in the very Frankenstein.
It's like we were creating our own references and then referencing them that nobody would be necessarily aware of.
So probably go to the next one. So this is just some behind the scenes stuff of one of the quizzes. So I work in a very different way than Hannah does, and like the video that you just saw is very indicative of previous video work that she'd done that I was very inspired by. But I work in After Effects, and I come from a much more like sort of technical polished background, so I was trying to like get to that level of not being too polished, which is really hard with After Effects, surprisingly. So if we go to the next slide, maybe you can just play all of those. So these are all screens that I did.
And to trying to build a story for ourselves, we knew like we were in.
But you can kind of see like the bits and pieces of video game tropes that we pulled. Like it starts with the game over screen, and then it has this very non-video gamey cutscene. Like there's no interactivity, and then I think we repurposed this part for the title because it opens with this. So we really just sort of we would build things and then rip them apart and then reconstitute them in the very Frankenstein.
It's like we were creating our own references and then referencing them that nobody would be necessarily aware of.
So probably go to the next one. So this is just some behind the scenes stuff of one of the quizzes. So I work in a very different way than Hannah does, and like the video that you just saw is very indicative of previous video work that she'd done that I was very inspired by. But I work in After Effects, and I come from a much more like sort of technical polished background, so I was trying to like get to that level of not being too polished, which is really hard with After Effects, surprisingly. So if we go to the next slide, maybe you can just play all of those. So these are all screens that I did, and this was one of the dual screen games. So this would be the touch, the hotspots, like the